Hello, hello. It is I, your host, Garrett Neal, coming at you quickly before the official start of the episode. And just wanted to add this because I recorded this episode before the Sky's game against the Phoenix Mercury, but was unable to actually release it before that time. So throughout the episode, I'm going to be referring to stats from the first 3 games of the season. The Sky did, unfortunately, lose this game as well, so I do believe that most of what I'm saying still holds true and is still worthy content. The Sky were actually winning against the Mercury for a majority of the game, but did blow a 16-point second-half lead and lost in the end. So wanted to put that in there. And also there's a point in this show where I'm talking about Tyler Marsh, the head coach, and I say that he had lots of previous head coaching experience, which he does not. He has lots of previous assistant coaching and other coaching roles, experience in other coaching roles. So that was, while there's going to be a few times in every podcast where I misspeak and I'm not going to catch them all, that one was particularly notable. And I just wanted to make it clear he does not have previous head coaching experience, but he does have previous coaching experience from around the league. So with those 2 little corrections and addendums out of the way, hope you enjoy episode 2. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to SkyTown Pod, episode 2. Wasn't sure if we'd make it here, but boy, this team has given us a lot to talk about since the season has started. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about everything that's gone on in the team's first 3 games, the good, the bad. There's a lot of that, and talk a little bit about maybe some things that the team can work on to hopefully improve as the season continues. And then, as always, we'll wrap up with a couple of things that I'm paying attention to, some storylines I'm following from around the league. So all that and more coming up. Boom. And that's where at some point we'll have like a transition or something. It's a new show. It's a growing show. So we're just going week by week. Hopefully this one is going to be up on YouTube as well to listen to. Hopefully we'll have video at some point in the future as well with little graphics and stuff like that. But it's most important for me right now to just get the episodes out there. And as I have the time and energy, I will slowly add on all those features that I would like to have on the podcast and that folks kind of expect when it comes to stuff like this. Make it feel more profesh, But that being said, let's hop into, unfortunately, what the heck's going on with the Chicago Sky. So if you haven't been following the WNBA season, we're just a little bit over a week into it, and the Chicago Sky are tied for last place with an 0-3 record. Currently, they started off the season with a blowout loss to the Indiana Fever in interesting fashion in terms of some kind of off the court things that happened in that game. Then they followed that up with a tough matchup against the New York Liberty, which was also a blowout loss. Final score of that one was 99-74. 93-58 was the Fever game. And then most recently, just a couple days ago, from when I'm recording this, they lost to the Sparks 78-91. So, hey, new season high for points, new season low for points allowed in that game. So, hey, taking away some very, very small positives there. But we're going to start off by we're going to start with the bad because that's the easiest to talk about. That's what everyone's talking about. So start with that. And then we're going to end on some good things and talk about things that I'm hopeful that we'll see going forward. But in terms of what's wrong, what's bad, well, basically everything. You can hop on the WNBA stats page and go to the team stats and sort best to worst. and you're basically going to find Chicago ranked somewhere between 11th and 13th on almost every category on that list besides rebounds. And frankly, the only reason this team's getting so many rebounds is because they're missing so many dang shots, man. It's crazy. But you're going down the list. We could talk about three-pointers. Oh, yeah, last year they didn't shoot that many threes. They only shot about 15 threes a game, right at the bottom of the league. They're hitting about 32%, which isn't really that good either. This year, hey, we've got our attempts up, or the Sky got their attempts up all the way to 25th. That's 7th, right about in the middle, shooting 28%. 28%, 11th in the league on 25% per game. So, okay, well, threes. What about layups? Layups shooting 43.8%, about 44% on layups. Layups is supposed to be the easiest shot in the game, baby. Shooting below 50% on that by quite a bit. Pretty embarrassing. 12th in the league. I believe it's the Fever, actually, who are below that, which is kind of wild. But anyway, horrible. Assists. 12th in the league at about 16.7 per game, just above the Valkyrie. Turnovers, 13th in the league, 20 turnovers a game. 20 turnovers a game. The next two teams are at 17. We're averaging almost 3 full turnovers a game more than everybody else in the league. Horrible. Free throws. 59%. 59% from the free throw line. That's embarrassing for a professional team. Frankly it is. 63% from the Fever at 12, which again is kind of wild. How are they 2-2? This is like one of those things you look at like, oh, like maybe they're a bit of a paper tiger. I don't know. But the Fever are a very unique situation. Anyway, the next team above the Fever is the Seattle Storm at 74%. So you got 74%. That's average. That's where everybody should be. And then you got a huge jump down to the Indiana Fever, and then a bit of a jump down to the Sky. Under 60% for free throws is astronomically bad. Summing it kind of all up, we have the plus minus of the team through the first 3 games. So this is just taking all those box scores that you had and adding everything up, and your total points scored versus your total points allowed. And the Chicago Sky are getting outscored on average by 24.3 points a game. 24.3 points a game. It's worse in the league. The Connecticut Sun have the next worst plus minus in the league at 15. And then it drops to 8 and then 2. So it drops pretty fast. And even that jump, almost 10-point difference between the Sky and the Sun, who also have not won a game yet. The Sun and the Wings, the 2 other winless teams right now, 0-4, Sky are 0-3. So not the only winless team for sure. You know, you got that going for it. If we're already talking a little bit of positive there. But even compared to these other winless teams, the Sky have been losing in, frankly, pretty embarrassing fashion, in my opinion. I'm sure a lot of the players would probably feel the same way. Losing by almost 25 points a game is bad. It's bad. There's no other way to say it. Net rating. So this is getting into those advanced stats, which is another one of those things that hopefully as the season progresses and I do more of these is something I'll be able to dig into a little bit more, but really starting on ground zero for this. So I got to find like all the right places to look for this stuff, understand myself a little bit more what each of these numbers mean. A lot of these are numbers that I hear about a lot when it comes to like NBA teams, and I have an idea of what they mean, but I don't know for sure. So net rating is the combination of the team's offensive rating and defensive rating, which is basically measuring, to my understanding, how many points they would score or allow in 100 possessions. So just taking average of 100 possessions based on a number of different factors from the games that have been played and saying, hey, on average, out of every 100 possessions, this team is going to score this many points and this team's going to allow this many points. So it's a great way to kind of eliminate a little bit of variance because teams play at different paces. Teams have a different number of possessions every game. Some have a little more on average, some have less. And it's just taking all those different numbers and averaging them into one thing so you can compare. Hypothetically, you can compare a little bit more apples to apples, as they say. And so the Sky's offensive rating is 84, which is last in the league. So saying out of every 100 possessions, Sky are going to score on average 84 points. It's pretty bad. Obviously, it's last in the league, and the Sky have not broken 80 points in a game. And they've been playing at a pretty high pace too. So on defense, their defensive rating is that on average, out of every 100 possessions, they're going to give up 114 points. So add that up. Their net rating is minus 29.8. So out of every 100 possessions that this team plays right now, according to this metric, you're getting outscored by roughly 30 points a game, or 30 points every 100 possessions. And the next worst is the Connecticut Sun. So that's one of those things. Like you take a look at these metrics, just like any stat, no single one is going to tell the whole story, but you can look at this and, which team has the best net rating in the league right now? The New York Liberty. Number 2 is the Fever. Number 3 is the Lynx. Number 4 is the Mercury. So you're seeing a lot of these teams that are playing very well at the start of the season, high up in the net rating. Who are the lowest 3 in net ratings? The Wings, the Sun, and the Sky. So that tells you a little bit about this as a metric for trying to tell the good and the bad teams is, obviously this rating is coming from the outcomes of these games that we've had and the different stats that those teams have accrued. But you can look at a lot of different metrics and see those rankings jumbled around. So the fact that those teams that are winning the most games are there at the top, and the ones that are losing the most are at the bottom, just kind of establishing net rating is pretty important. You hear it talked about a lot, especially when it comes to the NBA. So again, basically a negative 30 net rating, and the Connecticut Sun are a negative 20. So we have 10 points worse than that next worst team. So all this just to say, it's been horrible for the Sky. It's been embarrassing for the Sky. The season is basically gone has started as poorly as it possibly could have, barring a catastrophic injury to one of the team's players. And you can tell that these are all these lovely, lovely numbers and stats that are painting this picture. But you can tell even just by watching the game. And that's one of the tough things about doing a podcast like this is I haven't been able to watch every game live. So then I got to look up, I see, great, the Sky lost by 25 points. And now I got to go back and watch this whole game knowing what's coming and just watching this team run around here like chickens with their head cut off, looking like we got no offensive flow. Nobody knows what we're doing on either side of the floor. There's no chemistry anywhere. Nobody looks confident in what they're doing. And you can just tell by watching the team that they're completely disorganized is what it feels like to me. Of course, I'm not in the locker room. I'm not one of the players. I'm not part of that organization. So I don't know for sure. But just from looking at it, it feels like a team that's is not very organized and frankly has not been put in a position to succeed. Now, there's a few different things here. So, of course, Tyler Marsh coming in, new head coach, basically brought in a whole new head coaching staff. I didn't talk about this that much the previous episode, but I kind of had mixed feelings about letting Teresa Witherspoon go at the end of last season. While there were a lot of complaints about the X's and O's and the rotations, and for her, I thought that it felt like she was managing the emotional side of the game very well, which I think is just as important when it comes to being a head coach. And you have to take these professional players that have a lot of pride. There can be a lot of ego when it comes to competitive situations like this, and a lot of big personalities, especially on that team last year with Kennedy Carter, who has that kind of reputation. And you're going through a long season together, a lot of ups and downs. Like, that emotional side of things is really, really important. And it seemed like she did a really good job there. And hopefully with time, because that was her first year as a head coach, she could start to figure out that X's and O's stuff a little bit more alongside her assistant coaches. So kind of mixed feelings about that. But it's not like this is a situation where the team just went out and brought in some old veteran or someone who had ties with the team or the ownership, or just bringing in like, this is just like a random example, but like if they brought in like, Elena Deladon just retired, she of course started her career here, let's bring her in for a head coaching job, that'll get people excited. This doesn't seem like some kind of publicity stunt, right? Tyler Marsh, very respected name around the league and in the industry, has a lot of previous experience as a head coach. So on that level, it's hard to blame them as the Sky, because they did their due diligence. They brought in a really respected name who brought in a lot of other people who have a lot of great experience at the assistant and head coaching levels, both in the United States and in international basketball as well. That being said, it's hard to argue that Tyler Marsh and his staff have not hugely struggled coming out of the gate here. The team has obviously not performed well, and they frankly, like I said previously, haven't looked really prepared to start the season. It doesn't feel like people know what their roles are on the team, both offensively and defensively. There's no consistency in what's happening on the floor, especially focusing on the offense, because the defense has been bad. Everything's been bad, but I think a lot of it has started on that offensive end, where the team's just not able to create any consistent advantages. Some of that comes to the general manager as well. Good old Jeff, forget what his last name is. Jeff Pagliocca. Thank you, WNBA website. But Kennedy Carter was let go, which is a decision that personally I agree with. Kennedy Carter played really well for this team last year, and on a team that doesn't have a lot of offensive creation, she was able to be that player who's able to create consistent advantages against the defense, which is going to pop other players open. She's a really good scorer off the dribble, can find her own shot at almost any given time. Very, very talented player. However, she's also the kind of player that, in my opinion, limits the ceiling of your team, because in order to be at her best, she needs the ball in her hands a lot, and she's not at this time a great distributor or passer of the basketball, so she's not getting a lot of other people engaged and active, and she's not good enough as a scorer to be able to lift a team to the heights of a championship. At least not, I don't think so, from what I saw last year and have seen throughout her WNBA career. So that's on the court. I think she's very talented, but she's more of a floor raiser. So taking a bad team to a decent or good team, but she's not a ceiling raiser. She's not going to be able to take that good team up to that great level, which is what I would like this Chicago Sky team to be shooting for. So I don't blame the front office for letting her go. And that's not even accounting for all the apparent headaches that she causes behind the scenes. It's one of those things, like, there's not a ton of like stories coming out about her, at least not that I've seen. I'm not the most active on social media, but you just hear kind of vague things that, she's, has a certain type of attitude or whatever. But clearly there's something there because she had a career year last year and the Sky didn't re-sign her, and she ended up having to sign a contract overseas because none of the WNBA teams wanted to pick her up. So there's clearly something there. However, it seems clear that this offense and this team lacks creation, or at least they have been right now. You bring in someone like Ariel Atkins, bring in Kia Nurse, Rebecca Allen. These are all really good and versatile players, but they're not players that generally have had the ball in their hands a lot and have been the players that their teams have depended on to create their own offense. That being said, I do think that Kia Nurse and Ariel Atkins are capable of doing it more than they've shown so far, but there just hasn't really been that opportunity for them in terms of the way that Tyler Marsh has deemed the offense to be run. We're getting a lot of, again, it's tough to say without being in the locker room, like where does it end from the players and where does it start for the coach in terms of what's going on. But I watch these games, I'm seeing a bunch of screens being set at the top of the key and just people running back and forth, east and west, east and west, east and west. To create an advantage, at some point, you got to cut up in there. You got to move north and south. You got to make the defense make a choice. If you just go east and west, they don't have to do anything, and you're making it very easy on them. And then they're trying to create these threes. I don't know exactly how it works in the W. I was trying to look into it. In the NBA, generally, you want about 1/3 of your threes to come from the corners, because the corners are the easiest three-point shot because they're closer to the basket than what they call the above the break threes. So you imagine the three-point line, there's that area towards the two sides, right? You start in the corner, you start to come out towards half court. The area where that line starts to bend, that's the break. So anything above that's above the break three, those are farther away from the basket than the corners. That's why you see every team in the NBA prioritizes the corner three. Don't see that quite as much in the WNBA looking at the stats, but even from the WNBA perspective, the Chicago Sky, again, averaging about 25 threes a game right now. 2 of them are corner threes. Just 2. So what that tells me, which at least that corresponds with what I feel like I've seen watching these games, settling for a ton of above the break threes, off the dribble, contested. These are not great shots. If you're trying to replicate the offensive systems that have seen success recently in the NBA, like with the Boston Celtics, that are relying heavily on that three-point shot, well, as a Celtics fan, I can tell you that there's a difference in the games where the Celtics are putting forth the effort and energy to create good three-pointers as opposed to the ones where they're just settling and chucking up bad ones. There is a difference, even though at the end of the game, it might still say, hey, the Celtics put up their season average of 43s. They're going to score a lot more and a lot more consistently when they work to get those good threes. So it's not just about getting three-pointers up. It's about getting quality shots. And the offensive system we've seen right now has not been able to consistently deliver those quality shots. So I do think we can get more out of the players than we've seen right now as hopefully they figure out, whether that's the players or the coach, what everyone's role is and how to create those advantages. But you also just have to say, from the players who are supposed to be the best players on this team, whether that be an Ariel Atkins, who, again, for some crazy reason, the team decided to trade the 3rd overall pick for, which looks horrendous right now. All those people who were saying once Olivia Miles didn't declare for the draft, this move looked smart. No. Because this team is not ready to win right now. And Ariel Atkins has not been an impact player at all so far. Again, I think going a little bit into things to look forward to, things are going to get better. They're going to win some games. But she's not been an impact player so far. Who knows how long she'll be with the team? It might only be this year. Meanwhile, Sonia Citron is looking amazing over in DC right now, who could have been on this team for this year and under contract for the next 3 seasons to grow alongside Angel Reese and Camila Cardoso, which would have been great. Just adding one more really talented player to that young core. But they didn't do that. So eventually I'm going to get over it, but one of the reasons to start in this podcast, even though basically nobody listens to this, is we got to start holding these teams accountable. These teams have been lurking around in the shadows as the W has slowly started growing and growing in popularity, being able to kind of do these things without a lot of media attention and pushback. There have been some things here and there, but as the sport gains popularity, one of the things that comes along with that is you gotta mind your P's and Q's as an organization. And so when they make moves that I think are pretty self-destructive, like they made this offseason, like you got to let them know so that hopefully they don't do that stuff again in the future. Last pieces I'll talk about before I start moving on to positive, as I've gone on almost 30 minutes on the negative already. Thought this episode is going to be shorter than the last one, but yeah, man, it's so frustrating to watch this team right now. Camila Cardoso, Angel Reese. Huge struggle for them right now. Seen a lot of Cardoso. Kind of heard a lot of people talking about, she's not committed, she's not taking it serious. I want to push back on that a little bit because I think there's a tendency for players like Camila. She likes to play with a smile. She likes to have fun out there. And when a lot of folks see that, it's really easy to jump that conclusion like, they're not taking it seriously. They don't care. They're not competitive. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But I don't want to make that assumption about her character and her personality just from the way she carries herself on the court, because who's to say? However, you can still take a look at the way she has played in those games and say that a lot of times she lacks a lot of the physicality that you'd like to see from a player of her size. And it doesn't help that she's spending the summer playing overseas, not even in one of the stronger European leagues or something like that, but she's playing over in China against people that are a foot shorter than her, that just poses no real threat and is not the type of situation that's going to push her to become a better player. And so it's easy to see those things and then draw that narrative that, she doesn't take it seriously. And Angel Reese, on the other end, clearly takes this very seriously, is very dedicated, very hard worker. I honestly think on some level, she's got to find that mental balance sometimes to be able to kind of put things in perspective a little bit so you can keep your cool and maintain that ability to continue to push yourself even in the midst of huge amounts of adversity like she's faced this season, both on the court and off. But that is a good transition over into what's good and what can we look forward to as the season continues. Well, one thing when it comes to Angel Reese and Camila, these are the two folks that this team is supposed to be building around. And I'm sure that as the front office and Tyler Marsh were constructing the team and the offense through the offseason, they're thinking that these are going to be two dominant players that are going to force the defense to make choices, make hard decisions, and that's going to create some openings for the perimeter players to have those threes, to have driving lanes, all that sort of stuff. And there have been a couple moments here and there. There was one possession, I think it was late in the Sparks game, where Rebecca Allen had the ball on the left or the right wing and passed it to Camila at the mid post and cut right to the basket after that. And it was a great little give and go action there. And doing those types of things to give those post players the ball in the mid to low post where they're comfortable operating and cutting around those areas would be really great, I think, to see a little bit more of that. They're both pretty good passers for their size and their position. So hopefully we see a little bit more of that, letting them facilitate out of the post, make the defense react to their size and their power and react to them having the ball. Anyway, regardless, one thing to note is, as I mentioned last episode, development is not always linear. So players are not just going to get better game after game after game. You're always going to have some good games, some bad games. Sometimes it's not even season to season. You can have players, especially earlier in their career, have down seasons and then start to figure it out. Flip a switch, have something click mentally, whatever it is, and then they're able to start building off of that. So just because things are off to a bad start doesn't mean it's going to be a bad season for Camilla and Angel. And even if it is, that doesn't mean that they're bust, that their careers are over. They're super young. They're 23, 24 years old. They've been in the league a year, going to be 2 years after this. These are going to be players who are going to be around the league for 9, 10, 11, 12 years potentially. Even more, depending on how things pan out. So they have a lot of time to figure it out. And hopefully it's here with the Sky and they can turn this team into something really special. I think they have the talent for that. They definitely have the talent for that. And I'm hopeful that they'll be able to cultivate that talent as their careers continue. So that's one thing you got to fall back on in these situations is things can get better. And even for our young, talented players, a few bad games doesn't mean that they're going to be horrible for the rest of their career. And moving on from that, Haley Van Lith. We haven't seen a lot from her, and that's something that is also a concern of mine in regards to bringing in these veterans. You can't let the veterans get in the way of the development of your young players when you're a team that is still trying to build up to be that competitor that teams should be trying. You should be always trying to build to be a team that's competing for a championship year in and year out, and this team is clearly not there the way they played right now. And frankly, the way they played right now, they don't even look like a playoff team. I mean, the way they played right now, they've looked like the worst team in the league by a pretty good margin. I think that they will get better because the team, there's a lot of new pieces on the team. There's an entire new coaching staff, an entire new offensive system. So things are going to get ironed out as the season goes on. But this team still, as I said last episode, on paper, it's just not a championship level team. And on the court, they've shown they might not even be a playoff team. So I think one of the adjustments you have to make is to prioritize the development of your younger players. I think Maddie Westbeld, it's still going to be hard for her to see the floor. She's a second-round pick. She's just not as talented as the other young players. But frankly, I wouldn't be mad seeing her out there either. And it's one of those things, if the team had not made that pick or made that trade for Ariel Atkins, this just wouldn't even be a question. It would just be, hey, this team is still in that building phase right now. They're building up to become that championship team. We're playing the young players. We're prioritizing growth and development. When we win, that's great. But all we're doing right now is trying to grow and develop, build a winning culture, and build winning players. However, because you make that one win now move, now that throws everything into whack. Tyler Marsh, he's trying to prove he can be a head coach. We've got these vets that they demand minutes. When you sign these players to these contracts, they expect to play. So there's that aspect to it, right? There's that personal aspect, right? You can't just sit these people down on the bench because they're like, hey, like I'm a starter. You're paying me this much money. You told me that this is how much I was going to play. You got to honor that from a personal perspective. So that becomes a whole nother conversation. Meanwhile, and you're giving up those future assets for present players. So as the coach and as the front office, you're like, hey, we gave up something for this player. They need to play so we can see that value because the value's not coming later. Now is the value. So that makes it a little bit tougher to prioritize that growth and development. But at least Haley, who is a very popular player, and in the few times that she's been able to be on the floor, even as this team has been getting just blown out completely, she's looked fine. And she's frankly one of only a couple players on this team who's been consistently aggressive, looking to get other folks, being able to create advantages and get other people involved in the offense. So even if she's going to make a lot of mistakes, it might not lead to winning. At least as fans, we can sit there, we can watch a player that we want to watch, and we can watch her grow and hopefully see some of those signs that she could be a part of this team as they continue to grow. So that's something I'm looking forward to as the season continues, that hopefully as fans we're going to see a little bit more of those young players. And if the team continues to perform poorly, I think at a certain point you have to look at yourself in the mirror as the Sky front office, and you have to cut your losses and not keep doubling down on trying to show this team as a winning franchise, and you have to continue to just invest in your young talent. So we'll see if that happens, but hopefully it will as the season continues. But the main thing we can take away right now is that this is basically as bad as it can be. So I think everyone is going to play better as this season continues. The coaches are going to coach better. They're going to figure out what works and what doesn't. And it might not ever be pretty. It might end up being a much worse year than any of us as fans ever anticipated. But it's going to get better than it is right now. So that's kind of the note that I think I'll end on in terms of that. And wrap up by taking a look around the league. Things have, for the most part, kind of panned out the way that a lot of folks expected. We've seen a great start from the Liberty, of course, still undefeated. Minnesota, some folks might have thought was a bit of a flash in the pan last year, but they're starting out great as well. Seattle has been a bit of a surprise. They lost Jewel Lloyd in the offseason, of course, but brought in a couple other pieces. They've been playing well. The Valkyries, obviously super early. They're 2-1, though. After their first game, I thought they were going to be pretty bad, but it's like one of those things. They might not be great, but they've at least shown so far that they can play competent basketball, which the Sky have just not. Indiana, 2-2 right now. That's another team that folks had been saying might be competing for a championship this year. I don't know if they're there or not, but their two losses have been very close against some pretty good teams. They lost to Vegas, I believe. I'm trying to see if I can't see their schedule right now, but it's not popping up for me. So don't remember who they lost to, but if I remember correctly, it was against some pretty solid competition. So they're still, I think, going to be a very competitive team this year. And the Aces have also struggled coming out the gate a little bit, but I'm not really too worried about them. They got a lot of veterans on there. They'll figure it out. I think the one other surprise is Dallas. You know, the Fever were a big surprise last year. Caitlin Clark comes out, is immediately impactful. But even last year, the Fever were kind of struggling a little bit out the gate, and it took to that second half of the season for them to really start putting things together and make that playoff push. So we might see that from Dallas. But I also think now is a time when the Enrique Ngumbawale is going to have to start answering some questions, because she's been over there in Dallas for a while, just chucking up shots left and right, putting up a lot of flashy numbers, but not really winning much of anything. Now, she's got some serious talent on that team, and not much has come from it so far. So if this team continues to struggle this year, I think there's going to be a lot of questions about how much a player like Enrique Ngumbawale can drive winning and what her future is on that team and with Paige Beckers. That being said, I think a player like Enrique would be great on a team like the Sky right now, because we just need somebody who can create their own shot and somebody who can, again, create advantages against the defense, which Enrique can do very well. She does need, her shot selection's got to be better, but this might be, she can chuck up all the shots she wants and Angel can go down there and grab some rebounds. Which one thing I forgot to mention in terms of how it can improve things, Angel has got to be better on the offensive glass in terms of, like, when you get the ball, you don't have to go back up with it. You don't. If you get the ball and you have 3 people around you, that means there's 2 teammates wide open somewhere. So first of all, teammates, you got to get somewhere where Angel can see you and get you the ball. But Angel, you have to be looking around. Every time you grab the board, you can't just be forcing it back up. If it's not there, it's not there. You're not going to get that value out of the offensive rebound if you just throw it back up. The value of the offensive rebound is to get another quality offensive possession. Sometimes that means you get the rebound, there's nobody around, you can go right back up for an easy 2. But if you grab it and the defense collapses on you, then you kick it out for hopefully an open 3 or an open mid-range jumper, or you can just kick it out and the offense will reset. So that's another thing. She did that a lot last year. I think she's starting to learn from that because she had a lot of problems with that in the game against the Liberty. But that's one thing that she can work on. As good as the rebounding is, if you want to see the value from it, you got to make those choices. And the last thing that I will leave with for the show is Connecticut is also 0-4, which is great because as long as the team doesn't trade it, the Sky do have the rights to the Connecticut Sun first-round pick next year. So if they continue to be really bad, then the Sky are going to have a great first-round pick next year, which will be awesome because, boy, does it look like they'll need it, and they already traded away their – gosh, it just it just makes me think about how great it would have been if they already had Camilla and Angel and then were able to bring in Sonia Citron or another talented player this year, and then we're able to follow that up with the high pick from next year's draft from their Connecticut pick. That just would have been an incredible young core to watch grow together over the next several seasons. But hopefully we'll be able to see some growth from those players already on the team, including Haley Van Lith, and that player that the Sky get next year will just be one more piece, and we'll see what happens. But really rough start. It's going to get better, and hey, kept it to about 40 minutes this time. Go Sky, I guess.